really, what this comes down to is knowing your unit circle. How confident are you guys in your unit circle knowledge?
I'm pretty confident.
Okay, do we need to practice filling out a blank one? Do you guys feel like if you needed one on test, you know how to fill it out?
Right, yeah, I'll just always fill one out.
You'll just fill one out, but do we need to practice some? Or do you know how?
I can take one home with her.
Okay. Alright, so let's look at this. Yesterday we did a couple examples. The first one was pretty straightforward. We just solved for our trig function. Second one, we had to factor first by doing the greatest common factor. What about this one? Does anything stand out to you?
Factor.
Okay, how would we factor this? Box method. Okay, so we did box method back when we were doing proofs. We talked about it with our trig function, so this isn't totally new. This is my greatest sine squared x. This would be -2. So I need two things that multiply to -6, add to -1. Oh, come on, guys. What multiplies to -6 and adds to -1?
Maybe
Each of those gives a sine x. So if we factor, we can take out 3 sine x 2. So we can take out sine x and -1. So now we can set each of these equal to 0. So we have sine x equals -2/3 and sine x equals +1. Okay, you'll notice this time in the directions, I asked for all the solutions from 0 to 2 pi, so we are in radians on this one. I'm trying to find my x. So let's focus on the first one. If sine is negative, which quadrants can we be in? 3 and 4. Then we need our reference angle. Do we know when sine is 2/3? No, that is not one from our circle. So we're going to have to go to our calculator. So make sure you are in radian mode. And you will have to type in sine inverse, so second sine, of +2/3. The answer to an inverse is an angle. I'm not asking you to find sine of 2/3. I need to know what x is. So think if you want to move this sine to the other side, that's when you have to do the inverse. Excuse me. Okay. So to put that in quadrant 3, what do we do? If we're in degrees, we do 180 plus that. If we're in radians, 180 degrees is the same as pi radians. So we do pi plus the 0.7297. So we get 3.8713. In quadrant 4, we do 360 minus if we're in degrees. So in radians, it would be 2 pi minus 0.7297. So we get 5.5535. All right, over here, sine x equals 1. That only happens once on our unit circle. Sine is the y, when is y 1? At 90 degrees. In radians, that would be? So that is our final answer. We got 3 answers on this one. You can always check these by plugging them back into the original. Questions there? So why don't you guys see how far you can go with this one? Here's your 2 parentheses. Tangent squared breaks into tangent. Multiply to -2 and add to +1 will be +2, -1. Set those equal to 0, so you get tangent x equals -2 and tangent x equals +1. So to find x, if tangent is negative, that could be quadrants 2 or 4. Reference angle. Do we know when tangent is 2? No. So you do it on the calculator. We are in radians still, so radian mode. You have to do tangent inverse of +2 to get your reference angle. Then how do we put that in quadrant 2? Except pi minus, so that would be 2.0345. In quadrant 4, we do 2 pi minus. So that gives you 5.1761. Okay, over here, tangent is equal to a +1. So if tangent's positive, that's quadrants 1 or 3. Reference angle, we do know when tangent is 1. But your hand trick, it's when sine and cosine are the same. So that's at 45 degrees, which is pi over 4. So pi over 4 in quadrant 1 is pi over 4. In quadrant 3, that's 5 pi over 4. And you can check all 4 of these answers just by plugging them back into the original. So far, so good? Let's look at this one. All right, can I just say each of these things equals 2?
No.
That only works if it's a 0 over there. The only way to get 0 as a multiplication answer is if one thing was 0, but that's not the case with any other number. So what we have to do first here is actually multiply this out. So cosine times cosine is cosine squared x. 1 times cosine is cosine x equals 2. So then we could subtract over the 2. So then we can factor. Cosine squared breaks into a cosine. Multiply to -2, add to +1.
2 negative.
So if we set these equal to 0, you get cosine x equals -2, and cosine x equals +1. Right. If cosine is equal to a negative 2, when is cosine negative? All students take calculus, so they're all positive and one.
negative. Oh, I thought you meant.
Do we know when it's equal to 2? No. Try doing that on your calculator. Cosine inverse of 2. What does it tell you? Error. Yeah. Cosine can only be things between negative 1 and 1. So do I even have to worry about this? Nope. It won't work. So all I really have to figure out is when cosine equals 1. When does that happen? Yeah. This one I said all solutions. Let's do radians. So that's 0 or 2 pi. But if I say all solutions, that's when we have to add the, yesterday we did 360k. But if we're in radians, that would be 2 pi k. Or 0 plus 2 pi is just 2 pi k, where k is an integer. So basically every multiple of 2 pi. So at 2 pi, 4 pi, 6 pi, 8 pi, negative 2 pi, negative 4 pi, negative 6 pi, negative 8 pi. This will work. So when I say all solutions, if you're in degrees, you add 360k. If you're in radians, you add 2 pi k. We're going to do maybe 2 more. So, I want all the solutions here. We have more than one trig function, so it's not a matter of just setting something equal to 0. We can't factor anything. What can we do? We can do some of our proof stuff. Which one do you want to change? Either way, it's not going to matter. So if you replace sine squared x, what's sine squared equal to? So, if we add like terms, let's say I add that cosine squared over. So that's 2 cosine squared theta equals 1 plus 1 is 2. What would you do now? Okay. All right. So you could factor out a 2. Cosine squared minus 1. What could that break into?
Oh, cosine plus 1
minus. Alright, so if we set each thing equal to 0, does 2 ever equal 0? No, so we can ignore that. If cosine theta plus 1 equals 0, that means cosine is equal to negative 1. If cosine theta minus 1 equals 0, that means cosine theta is equal to positive 1. Alright. So, cosine theta equals -1. Think about your unit circle. Cosine is the x. When is x -1? It's negative in 3 and 4. Not 3 and 4. We're talking about cosine. 2 and 4.
Yeah, I was like,
When does cosine equal -1? Yeah. Right here, which is pi or 180 degrees. I didn't specify, let's do radians. And it equals +1 at 0. And then since I said all solutions, what would we add to each of these?
plus
Where k is an integer. Bless you. 0 plus 2 pi k, you could just say that's 2 pi k. Either way, I'm not going to count off if you leave it like this. There's just several different ways of writing this. You could even say, the way this one works out, it's every multiple of pi. So you could really just say pi k on this too. But as long as you have an equivalent answer, I'm okay with that. You don't have to have the simplest answer, it just has to be equivalent. All right, let's stop there. And I am going to give you some problems. I'm giving you odds because I want you to check and make sure you're on the right track.